Welcome once again back to the lab. It is your old Professor Pilk, and I guess you guys are enjoying the series, and we're going to continue onward. Now, we talked the other day about a bunch of different options as far as like fairy and dragon options that are... We haven't talked about an ice option yet. That is coming. But some options that are coming up for the newer raid that's coming in here shortly, and actually just a matter of about 10 days at this point. So we are... Actually, less than that. We're, 9 days away, I think. But... Nevertheless, being this close to the very first shiny legendary raid, we really need to ramp it up. We need to start talking a little bit more vigorously about different mon that you could bring to this. Now, obviously in this series, we've been trying to, recycle mon that we've used before, especially like builds we've used before, just slight modifications of older builds. This is what we're throwing back from quite a ways ago, and that is Iron Valiant. Now, Iron Valiant can be a special attacker or a physical attacker. In this case, because Iron Valiant does have access to Sword Stance and does have a fairy physical move, I went with a physical build on this. Physical attack's a little bit higher, but I'll be honest, it's only like 10 points higher. It's really not that groundbreaking. The biggest problem with Iron Valiant is defense, but I do feel like in this particular situation, being that you want to have this mod at level 100 and you're going up against the level 75 mod, I suspect you'll be okay. I do have kind of a way around this, but we'll talk about that here in a moment. Now, we've talked at length about Rayquaza having the ability to do multiple types of buffs, especially physically attacking buffs, and he already is a really, really, really strong physical attacker. So mostly, and a special attacker at that. But more often than not here, we're going to be dealing with the physical attacking side of this. So I do feel like with an Adamant Mint, you're going to be able to produce the most amount of physical power possible. And normally I would stick with a Stellar Terra, but in this case we kind of went back to our roots with a Fairy Terra. And the main reason for that is because I feel like with the Stellar Terra, the fighting type does keep you open for some extra attacks. I think the Fairy type closes up just about most every avenue that he could potentially have to do damage. So I really feel like sticking with like the OG, like a Fairy Terra on this is going to be just the best way to handle the situation. Quark Drive abilities are the only ability you have access to, so I don't need to worry about that. We almost always use the Shell Bell with rare exception. Now, I'll get into moves here in a minute, but you can already see Sword Stance is there. Because that, like I said, we're focusing completely on physical attacks. So, what I've done, not only with the Adamant Mint, but I've also put EVs all the way up on physical attack and physical defense, because I don't feel like, after everything we're going to be putting into this, I don't feel like you need to worry too much about any of the special moves that he's going to have in his repertoire. I think those are non-starters at this point. I suspect. We don't know the build yet, but I suspect that's the case. So I went all the way out of physical attack and physical defense, because I think physical defense is where you really need it the most. So HP is a little bit low, do note, though. Be really cautious about that, because HP on this mod is low, as is the defense. You're going all in trying to produce as much damage as possible and use that Shell Bell to kind of recoup health. I feel like you should, in theory, be faster, mostly because of the level difference, but, he does have access to moves that also increase speed, so only time will really tell in that regard. But, moves-wise, obviously you see Sword Stance up there. Rayquaza also has access to Sword Stance. So Rayquaza, you could pretty much bet, is going to be maxing out his damage if you give him the opportunity to. This is where we go down to move number 4 with Taunt. Now, the exception to this would obviously be some of those special moves that you kind of have a real hard time taunting around. But if you drop a taunt early on, it stops him from buffing. And you can basically keep taunting until his barrier goes up. The exception to that might be if he's one of those mon that drops a barrier instantly. And he may very well be. We've seen that before with level 75 mon with these 5-star raids. So taunt is a question mark. But so is Drain Punch. So let's really talk about your strategy here. With this build, your strategy is taunt immediately, prevent any buffs. You start buffing. Obviously, he's going to remove buffs at some point. And I do feel like with a Rayquaza build, more than likely he's going to do that probably somewhere towards the center of the fight. So you could do an early single Sword Stance and you could use a combination of Drain Punch before you Terastallize, because it's still going to have Stab at that point, and Spirit Break to try to produce as much damage as possible to recoup all your health. Drain Punch in the early portion of this could be really vital to getting some of your health back. But Spirit Break is going to be your main DPS. You're going to want to put you're going to want to put as many of your PPFs as you can in that. You want to have that maxed out, because once you Swords Dance and once you're doing all of your damage, Spirit Break is really where it's going to have the most effect. Now, here's the kind of kicker here. There's a fifth potential move here, and that is Reflect. If we're in a situation where the barrier goes up really early, you don't have the opportunity to taunt, replace Taunt with Reflect. If you're in a situation where you could taunt, but you don't really feel like using Drain Punch, you think you get enough healing out of Spirit Break, swap Drain Punch with Reflect, and just put up Reflect to cut down that damage. Anything you can do to reduce damage incoming is not a bad strategy. I tend to go more offensively. And this kind of brings me back to something some of you guys have mentioned in the comments, is we don't really focus on, at least on this channel, on support builds. So if you do want to see more support builds, because a lot of people brought up Gardevoir, which led me to drop this one today. If you want to see some support builds for an actual raid, you let me know. But for the most part, you know, I personally love solo running these. I think it's a little bit more reliable. I've really had problems in the past of doing group raids with randos, and randos just bringing crazy things that make no sense. You know, like, we have a fighting raid, and so we'll bring, I don't know, I say Eradicate, but he's not in this game. But nevertheless, you get the idea. Like, they'll bring some kind of Normamon to a fighting raid. You're like, what? Why are you doing this thing? So I like to do solo runs. Plus, there's some people out there that aren't really going to have access to this. Maybe their internet connection isn't great. Whatever. So I like to stick with the solo run so that those people have an option as well. But if you guys want to see some support builds, let me know. We can definitely throw like a Gardevoir build in here or something like that to kind of build that up. So that's where I need your feedback in this to let me know. But this is probably, I won't say my favorite for this. I do still kind of like Tinkaton. Tinkaton is just a personal favorite Pokemon. I feel like the Azumarill build we did the other day is probably like a no-brainer build. I think that's the one that's actually going to be probably the most dangerous to, at least to Rayquaza in this situation. But if you're just looking for a more fun run, or you want to stick with the native fairy types, or you want to stick with a Gen 9 mon or whatever, for whatever reason, or you've got a shiny and you want to flex your shiny, absolutely, you see me do that all the time. Great opportunity. I think this is going to be a fun run. Let me know what you guys think in the comments as well. Let me know what you guys want, and if you want to see some support builds, things like that. We have about a week left, so make sure you guys stay tuned. We got a lot more coming up, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.